Election season is upon us, and on November 6th, you will be asked to vote for, among many other things, your state representative in the 5th Barnstable District. I'm Greg Anderson, standing in front of State Representative Randy Hunt's house, where he has invited us in to talk a little bit about his quest for another term. Let's go inside, have that conversation. Well, thank you, Randy Hunt, State Representative, for welcoming us into your home.
Happy to do that. I'm glad that you're here. Good to meet you, Greg.
Yeah, this is our first time meeting, though I've seen your face and I've seen you at town meeting and plenty of other places, but it's a nice opportunity, and again, welcoming us into your home. I appreciate that.
Sure.
Let's start things off. How's the campaign going?
Campaign's good.
Yeah?
We've been through a few of them, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
I ran for select board in 2004 and 2007. This position as state rep opened up in 2010 as an open seat. The prior state rep ran for Congress that year. Yeah. And then, of course, we've had races since. I only had one time when I had no opponent, and that was 2 years ago.
Oh, interesting.
But every other time I've had at least one and as many as four.
Yeah, wow.
So,
how does this one compare, if you will?
Well, you know what's different about this campaign, Greg, is not the campaign itself. Because I think my opponent's doing a good job. We're having good back and forth, and there's nothing acrimonious at all about what's happening. And I like that, and I wanted it to be that way, and I think it'll stay that way. But what's different is what's happening on the national scene. So politics has gotten to the point where you have to be right or wrong, or black or white. You have to support the left or the right. There doesn't seem to be, everything's so polarized that it kind of leaks into the state campaigns, especially at the level of the constitutional offices and, of course, for governor and all that. And so I think that it almost casts a pall over it. I'm sad to see it that way, because on Beacon Hill, we're not that way. The Cape Cod delegation of 8 senators and representatives, we're not that way. Mm-hmm. We work together very closely. We have voted for things that traditionally, or at least if you were in Washington, D.C., you'd have a split vote between the Democrats and the Republicans. But we voted for things together because Cape Cod is a unique place in Massachusetts. It's a space that's geographically defined, and although we only have 8 of us in the legislature compared to 20 plus who are in Boston, we work together to get a bigger voice. Mm-hmm. And with this Baker-Polito administration, all of that work has been, I've found it very gratifying. I've worked under 2 different governors. Yeah. And well, not under, we're in an equal branch of the government, but sure. The state being run by 2 different governors, and I find what these folks are doing to be very open. I can get a hold of the governor and the lieutenant governor at any time, any of the secretaries. Yeah. There's good communication. And what I hear in Beacon Hill is this, from my Democratic colleagues who say the very same thing, that they also have experienced much more open process and being able to get their questions answered. Karen Polito has been to all 351 towns and cities in the Commonwealth since she started as lieutenant governor. I find all of that uplifting. So my point being that what's happening in Washington isn't really what's affecting us day to day, but kind of over the whole election cycle, it's created this kind of a fog that I wish wasn't there, but it's just there.
And of course, you look at social media's impact and traditional media. I would think being an elected official and even running for office, if you have an R next to your name, you get linked to Trump.
They try and do that.
Yeah.
But
have you experienced that?
Well, no, I haven't, because I didn't vote for Trump, and I said that at the time. So I didn't vote for either Hillary or Donald. So in that case, but for me, it came down to simply this: I wouldn't want any of my 6 kids, who are older now, obviously, or dozen grandchildren, put it that way. Wouldn't want any of my dozen grandchildren to grow up to be like Trump. Some of the policies that are going on have been good, no question. Some not so good. But this whole thing about tweeting constantly, and some people come to me and they say, how come he doesn't get more credit for the good things that he does? And the answer to that is because he stomps all over them before they get a chance to breathe. So that's the kind of thing that's going back and forth. I don't get tied to Trump because I'm not tied to Trump.
Yeah.
You know, there's a Cape Cod Times questionnaire that was out a few months ago, right after Trump came back from Helsinki, asking the Republicans about what they thought. And I answered all of their questions. But most of the other people kind of dodged the questions.
Yeah.
But I made it very clear where I stood on that.
Yeah.
So the things that are good are good. I have Democrat colleagues in the House who have come up to me during slow times and said, you know what, I would never say this in public, but my retirement accounts look fantastic. I love this guy for that.
Yeah.
But, you know, then there's the other stuff too.
Right. You know, as a four-term incumbent, you have a voting record, active legislative platform from which to run, and you talk about the opioid crisis, you talk about energy, the bridges, transportation, school safety. There's a whole host of things, and we're going to get into a lot of that.
Yeah.
But I always wonder, from an elected official perspective, there are the issues that you feel are really important to your constituents, and then there's what people may say at CVS or Stop and Shop, and they say, Randy, you know what, here are the issues that I'm really facing. What do you feel your constituents are really charging after right now that would almost motivate them to vote, particularly in this midterm election?
Well, Barnstable County is, by demographics, the third oldest county in the country. So many of my constituents follow that. Of course, I'm making it worse every year that goes by, too. But they have concerns about how their money is going to hold up. Can they, remain retired the way they thought they could be? Are they going to have to sell their house? How can they save money? Are they worried about Social Security? That's a federal issue, obviously. But so I see that kind of thing. And on that front, look, we studied very heavily what was happening with internet infrastructure on Cape Cod in Barnstable County, and we have poured $38 million of public money into something called Open Cape, that is a fiber optic network, which has a line that runs right in front of my house here, okay? But if I wanted to hook up to it, it would cost me $3,200. That's the quote that I got. Well, that amortizes over too long a time for me to switch off of our Comcast, which is a monopoly when it comes to household internet. So we were trying to figure out how we could work, maybe on a county level, maybe with all the towns, the 15 towns in an intermunicipal agreement, to come up with some way to get high-speed quality internet, to get some competition on that front here on Cape Cod. So that's the background to this. Then we said, okay, this is going to take a while. We also talked about getting Boston antenna, TV antenna repeater down here on Cape Cod, and we're working on that too. That's a little ways away. The question became, can we help somebody save money like right now? $50 a month, $100 a month, $200 a month? The question then was, let's teach people how to watch TV like a millennial. They don't pay $225 a month to Comcast to watch TV, believe me. Most of them don't spend anything at all.
Yeah.
And so we've done about 10 seminars that have been filled every single time. It seems crazy. You'd say, we're going to do an hour-long seminar on how to watch TV, and it fills up, okay?
Yeah.
But the reality
My children would be there.
they don't need it, I'm telling you.
Yeah, that's right. They got to figure it out.
People there learn how to do things differently, how to reduce their Comcast down to a basic cable version. And by the way, this is cable access TV, which gets its money from these Comcast contracts.
Yeah.
We get that. And in the presentation, I have an entire page on the value of PEG TV and what it's all about. So it's not like we don't get it, but 3.5 million people disconnected from the cable in 2017. And that is across the country, and that's continuing. So what we're teaching people to do is how to do streaming. Pick your programs. We can teach somebody who spends $250 a month right now in their Comcast bill how to do it for $100 to $125. That saves a ton of money for somebody who's worried about, maybe that difference of $100 a month makes a difference.
Yeah.
So that kind of thing, it's not the platforms, it's not the bridges, not the houses, it's not the wastewater, it's not all of those things, but it's some practical things that we can do to help people right now while we work on those bigger issues.
In the, you've got these issues like this, it seems like it's dwindling down to, which is very appropriate, kind of how does it hit my pocketbook? How does it hit my wallet? How can you save me some money? Not you, but how can, we're in a high taxed area, particularly Sandwich. It's tough to get on and off the Cape, so transportation, I'm putting money in my gas tank all the time, so how can I save? Is this monopoly, as you're talking about, over the next 2 years, if you are reelected, is that going to be a main charge of yours to try to knuckle that down?
One of them for sure.
Yeah.
So I explained, what we're trying to do is come up with competition for Comcast.
Right.
Okay, great. But here's another one, wastewater.
Yeah.
We have a $4 billion price tag on what came out in the 208 study, saying here's all of the hot spots, here's what we need to do, a variety of different engineering solutions, which is good. I always said since the beginning, since before I ran in 2010, I said first let's identify the problem and then identify the engineering solutions and then go after the money to fix the problem. Because I was afraid at that time that we would first go after the money and then just throw money at it, which would not be a good solution. So we've done everything in the right order, but we have a $4 billion price tag. That's going to fall on the 215,000 people that live on Cape Cod fully, and the businesses, if we didn't have some sort of relief. Federal money, kind of up in the air, but we're working on that. But we did, as a Cape delegation, all 8 of us, and it was Sarah Peak and Julian Sear who put the initial bill together to be able to have a surcharge on rooms tax. So this is for people that are visiting here. The ones that cause us to have a wastewater system that needs to be triple the capacity of what we would need if just the 215,000 of us lived here year round without this bubble that happens in the summertime that brings it up to 800,000 people. So we put together the bill, we all supported it. And what it does is put a convention center style surcharge on there, which will cover $1 billion out of the $4 billion that we expect we're going to have to spend over the next 40 years. That kind of solution is big. It's going to allow people to stay here who otherwise would not have been able to stay here. And if we do well with a match from the federal government, then I think we'll have something that we can manage fiscally.
We are in the midterm elections. You have a lot of things going in your favor. You are an incumbent. Incumbents tend to do well in re-elections. You have name recognition. Your opponent does not. Where are you vulnerable in this campaign?
Well, I'm not going to put that on tape, am I? Okay.
Well, you're talking about...
That's an interesting question. That's like asking a lobbyist what the other lobbyist is going to say, which I do, by the way.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I've tried, look, I lived here in Sandwich. Mary and I have lived here for 21 years, okay? It happens to be the same amount of time that my opponent lived in Sandwich. And obviously we're older, so I've spent 17 of those years in either appointed or elected positions. That is an advantage. But it's not just because I've been doing this job for a while. It's because I learned what things go on at a local level. I was on the finance committee for 3 years. I mentioned that I used to have a cable access TV show, and we talked about this stuff a lot. It was called A Little Knowledge is a Dangerous Thing, and that kind of happened at the same time I joined the finance committee back in 2001. So I did that for 3 years, then I ran for the select board. Boy, I'm a CPA, and so I get the numbers thing. I've been a CPA for 35 years, but town finances, like a real strange bird to me when I first got on the finance committee. But over that 3 years, I really got a good understanding of how that works. It's not like the simplest thing I've ever dealt with.
Yeah.
Then as a select board person for 6 years, chairman one of those 6 years, you learn a lot more about how all of the town departments work and the dynamics of what's going on, how Sandwich compares to other towns with resources or tax bills. You know, we're high in our tax rate here in Sandwich compared to most of the rest of the Cape for two different reasons. One is the tax rate itself out in Chatham is really low because the houses are so expensive.
Yeah.
Okay? But the other thing is we're a little bit more similar to South Shore towns, and we are a commutable town up to Boston metro area. And because of that, we had a lot of kids in the school system that spent, we spent 70+% of our budget for many years just on schools. And we're probably not too far from that today, although the population is down. So we learn those things along the way. It helps. It's a real thing. Charlie Baker and Karen Polito were on their select boards. They did that work. They understand that stuff. I think that's a huge advantage. It's not just being around for a number of years, you have name recognition, got a little bit of money in the bank, and that kind of thing. It's much more than that. It's the experience that I bring to the table. And on top of that, there are 200 people in the legislature. There's 40 senators, 160 reps. There are 2 CPAs. I'm one of them. The other one is Lori Ehrlich, and she is not any longer operating a CPA practice. She quit that a few years ago. So I stopped getting new clients, soliciting new clients in 2010 when I took this job, but we've kept that business. We have over 300 people who come through here every year.
Wow.
And they want to talk about their tax returns a little bit, but the rest of the time that I spend with them, they want to talk about their issues. This is where I hear a lot of what's going on. This is where I hear from clients who are nurses, and we have many of them, men and women who are nurses, who tell me about the situations that relate to this question one, about why this is necessary. And at the same time, we have some hospital executives that we talk to frequently who give us kind of the other side of that thing.
Right.
So I think that exposure that you get from dealing with people who are actually doing businesses, we have about 85 businesses amongst the 300 people, some are couples.
Sure. But
we do probably about 250 returns every year. And that back and forth that we get, and that every year, year after year, and kind of getting that feedback, it's all really important to what I carry with me to Beacon Hill.
Yeah.
You can talk to, and I'd invite you to do this, call any of my colleagues, Democrats or Republicans, any of them, and just ask. Just ask what I bring to the table because of my experience, and specifically because of my certification as a public accountant.
Well, I would also just add you are known for that crossing the aisle. You have
Sometimes I cross the line.
it's okay, crossing the line. I like it when people cross the line, frankly, but makes for a hell of an interview. But bipartisanship. A lot of the things that you have put your name on have bipartisan involvement.
Of course.
You mentioned question one. In a recent interview, and I think it was a formal debate with Mindy Todd, it seemed as if you were, not seemed, you were not taking your opponent's challenge to determine or state whether you support question one or not. Can you clarify that? What is your stand on question one?
Well, I don't know which way I'm going to vote myself, and
Okay.
I'll tell you why. Part of it is because I hear so many stories of overtime shifts that weren't expected, people that don't show up, extra hours, all kinds of demands from certain hospital systems. Some are more egregious about this stuff than others. And I hear about that effect. So I get it. I get that nurses would like to see this ratio be set. There's actually more than one ratio. It goes from as little as one nurse for 4 patients to one nurse for 6 patients, depending on the type of setting that you're in. And so I understand that. Now the other side says, well, if you do this, everybody's going to close. You know, every hospital's going to close. We're going to have no services. Now, come on, I've been around for a while, right? That's not going to happen. One side says it's going to cost $47 million. That's the proponents.
Right.
The opponents say it's going to cost $1.2 billion. Come on. You know, if I had 2 clients, a man and a wife coming in here, a husband and a wife separately, and the husband came and told me, I said, how much did you make last year? And they said $47,000. And then the wife comes in later and says, we made $1.2 million. I think I'd look into that. Because it doesn't seem like, you know, that's right. So the Healthcare Policy, Health Policy Commission did a study and said it's really kind of down the middle.
Yeah.
Somewhere between 650 million and 970 something million that it would actually cost. But then, you know, the proponents would say, actually I haven't heard them say this, they should take it from me. They should say, well, this money's not going to the ether. This is going to be earned by nurses, additional nurses, right? So it's not going to like just disappear. People are going to earn that money. They're going to spend it in the economy, and it's not all just going to go away, vaporize. Right. And then on the other side, because I'm the ranking member, minority member in the Healthcare Finance Committee, it's a joint committee of senators and Republicans, senators and representatives, we look at the details about those hospitals that are in the Commonwealth. We know that there are 7 or 8 that are just about to teeter and go over the edge.
Yeah.
This is not going to help them. Those would have trouble, and we know there's about 23 or 4 more that could really be affected by this in a bad way. So what I would say is, if you're going to vote yes, trust us as a legislature to step in to make sure that not every hospital is going to close in the state, okay? So if you want to vote yes, I'm totally happy with that. I get it, okay? If you want to take the other side, where we know that Massachusetts in quality of delivery of health care is number 2 in the nation, only behind Vermont somehow. I think we have tougher cases in Boston maybe than Vermont does.
I would think so, yeah.
That the argument that it's going to create better quality of care, pretty hard to believe that one.
Yeah.
California, that has had this law in place for around 10 years or so, is 23rd in the nation on quality of care. They employ more Filipino nurses than live in the Philippines. That's how they were able to take all of these extra positions and integrate people into them. Here, we already have a nursing shortage. This will make it worse. In some cases, I think it's true that some of these hospitals are not going to be able to make it. And the more public payer, meaning Medicare and Medicaid payers that there are, the worse they're going to be off. So I don't know exactly yet how I'm going to vote on that, but I'm certainly willing to educate people on both sides of that so they can make an informed decision.
Let's switch gears, Randy. Transportation. It's a big part of your legislative and campaign platform. You know, the bridges, the rails, getting people on and off the Cape. It's you know, we're always dealing with it. But as predictable as a 7-mile backup on the Sagamore in July, we will always seemingly have this problem with getting people on and off the Cape. You know, if you're going back up to the State House, and I see on Facebook you're posting, you know, the Army Corps of Engineers has got this work going on, and this, you're trying to keep people abreast of what's going on. But when you're sitting there white-knuckled 7 miles back behind the Sagamore trying to get off the Cape, you're thinking, somebody help me out. How do you take that frustration to Beacon Hill?
Well, it's both federal and it's state.
Yeah.
The Army Corps of Engineers for the last 3 years has been looking at solutions for, along with Mass DOT, Department of Transportation, for the whole transit area around the canal. The Army Corps of Engineers in May and this is like the third or fourth postponement of this report, but I'm hoping this time it'll be May of 2019, is going to put out a report that says we're either going to continue to maintain these existing bridges or we're going to replace the two bridges, Sagamore and Bourne, with two new bridges. The plan is that if that's the call, and I think that will be the call, by the way, based on everybody that I've talked to.
You do?
I do. I think that we're going to, have the firing, the starter gun is going to go off to a time period that's probably realistically going to last somewhere between 10 to 15 years, where all of those permits, the environmental studies, taking of land, whatever is required, is going to take probably half of that time, whether it's 10 or 15 years, and then building the bridges will probably take about 5 to 6 years. And that is a $500 million expenditure to build the spans. Another $500 million from the state to do all the connecting roadways and to make a lot of improvements to help you not be in a 7-mile line. But there's going to be those Sundays and Mondays in the summertime because that people are going to be in line. There's no question. You can't build the entire road network to accommodate for the 3 or 4 or 5 times in a summer when, to keep all traffic moving at all times.
Yeah.
So they have to do the best they can. But in the studies that we've looked at, they're going to do a heck of a good job of reducing a lot of those queues. One of the things they're going to do is coming onto the Cape. You have those Friday nights. From the Sagamore Bridge, by the way, let me say this, 3 lanes in each direction. That's the plan. Okay, 2 through lanes. The other lane will be on at the beginning, off at the end, except for heading onto the Cape on the Sagamore Bridge. That third lane is going to continue all the way out to exit 2. So all of those people that head south towards Mashpee and Cotuit and all of those places, we're going to have 3 lanes moving onto the Cape all the way from the bridge to exit 2 so that we relieve some of that jam up that we have all the time on Fridays.
Right.
And so this whole thing is now going to be, the next question is, and this is why I need to be back on Beacon Hill. I'm on the Transportation Committee.
Right.
Now we're going to shift to how do we pay for all of this stuff?
Yeah.
It's $500 million for the state. Fortunately for us, people, the feds are going to pay the other $500 million to do the spans.
Yeah.
Which means that our friends in Alaska and Hawaii are going to help us out a little bit.
And we say thank you to them.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so we need to do a good job on the federal level too,
What
to
if-
make sure we get those funds.
What about rail? What about trains?
Okay, trains. Look, we have this Cape Flyer, but don't think that that is some sort of example of what we could do. I do support having MBTA come into Buzzards Bay. I think that's a good idea. The train lines, the tracks have been upgraded, and we'll be able to do that pretty effectively. And we could even now start a service there. And we were planning to have a test service, but some other things got in the way. So I'm good with that. It's about an hour long, 50 minutes to an hour long trip from there. So if you're down our way in Sandwich or, Barnstable, that type of thing, going all the way over to Buzzards Bay to get on a train that's going to take you an hour to get to South Station, may not be the best way to go, because I can usually get there in about an hour and 15 from my house.
Right.
Sometimes it's worse, obviously. So I'm not so sure that's going to satisfy everybody in the Upper Cape area. And that the train that carries 14,000 people, whatever the flyer did, we have that many people going over the bridges every 30 minutes. So that type of thing that goes all the way to Hyannis on these slow rails, that would not be a solution for getting to Boston for work.
Yeah.
So I support the rail down to Buzzards Bay. The Bourne Town Committee, they voted to be part of the MBTA. So when they get service, they're going to be in and they'll pay the fees that are due to the MBTA for that.
Let's shift gears and talk about law enforcement. You were recently at the Back the Blue event in Hyannis. There is a lot to talk about with law enforcement today as it relates to what we're seeing just on the national news, if you will. But they're clearly under fire. how do you,
Literally.
yeah, literally, what can government do to protect those who protect and serve?
Well,
And this kind of dovetails into school safety as well.
it does. And okay, so first, that Back the Blue that was in Hyannis had nothing to do with that hate group that they were talking about on the Senator Warren Representative Deal debate.
Right.
By the way.
With the Muslim,
Yeah.
yeah, message, yeah.
That group wasn't there. Just ACT is what it's called.
Okay.
So I just wanted to clarify that because it was called Back the Blue. What we have done is we passed a bill that puts a $2 fee on a car rental. Not a day, but for the whole term of however long you rent the car. That is in place now. That will provide upwards of $11 million a year that's going to be a permanent fund to fund the training for our police. What we've been doing in the past is we have a line item for that. And that gets battled on every year. And you know, when it's in a down year, it doesn't get as much. Maybe it gets $4 or $5 million or less. Sometimes it gets 7. I think that's what we got this time. The firefighters have had a surcharge on homeowners insurance for many years, and that's what's paid for their training. The police never had that. Now we've put that in place. Is it a new tax? Yeah, it's a new tax on people that are visiting this state, renting a car. Well, if you rent a car, then you know, whoever you are.
Yeah, whoever you are.
You're gonna pay $2. It's not a big stretch to have a consistent line item for funding for our police training. That will excuse me, that will help, no doubt. So training has been an issue. Now, as far as other safety issues go, I don't know what the answer is going to be. This is a national thing where the police have been under attack, and some groups have encouraged that to happen. And that's, I don't know how we solve that.
Yeah.
On the local front, when I was chairman of the select board in Sandwich in 2006, there was a shooting that occurred down in Pennsylvania at a one-room schoolhouse. 7 people were killed. And it was then I thought, it doesn't matter how little the town we are. You know, Sandwich, 20,000 people. Could it happen here? And the answer was very clear. It could happen here. So we put together a school safety group. We had the benefit of having Walter Lesiak, who is a professor at a college, I think it was in Michigan, I could be wrong about that, who studied Columbine and Jonesboro and other of these incidents to figure out what went wrong and what should happen to be prepared for it. He lives here, he's retired here. So we put him on this board. The thing we did not do is I didn't want the police chief, the superintendent, or the fire chief to be on this committee. I wanted people below them with, you know, the contact with what's actually going on to lead the group. J.J. Burke, who is now our fire chief, was that guy from the fire department. And this group did wonderful work on a limited budget, ran drills. We actually evacuated Forestdale Elementary, K-8, onto buses and moved them over to Corpus Christi Church as part of this drill, and which included kids with needs, physical needs. And so we did a lot with that, and we're still doing that now. I challenged the governor and the lieutenant governor to step it up on this issue, particularly after Parkland, Florida, and a high school in Houston area that's only a stone's throw from my brother's house, to let's do more. Look, we have the lowest gun death rate in the country in Massachusetts. That's good, but we could do more. And those things that we did in Sandwich, I want to see done everywhere. And so we put together a $72 million line item that's part of the closure of the prior year budget to put money into building safety, more counselors, more training for school resource officers who are actually police.
Right.
Putting that money in place, making grants available so that school systems from across the Commonwealth can actually tap into that and bring their level of safety up. And we're doing that this year, and hopefully we'll have something similar to that. It's a 3-year program, the 72 million, so we got partial funding this time. And hopefully we'll continue to do that and upgrade everybody in the Commonwealth.
There's so many issues, Randy, to talk about, and I gave your opponent 30 minutes, so I'm giving you 30 minutes, and we're rounding close to that.
How much do we have left, Greg?
You got about 4 or 3 minutes here,
Okay.
so we're gonna go through this. But here you got in Sandwich, you have an unenrolled count of about 9,700 people.
Okay.
In Sandwich alone.
Yep.
You got more Republicans than Democrats. It's that independent vote that is clearly must be right in your scope. What is your message to that independent voter in your district?
All of the people that have left parties because they are just truly unattached to them, or more recently because they just got disgusted with the far left wing or the far right wing of the Democrats and Republicans respectively. Those are the people that are like everybody, most everybody. You know, in the state, 55% of the registered voters are unenrolled. I think that kind of tells you that they want to be able to go to a primary and pick the ballot that they want to pick and vote for the people they want to vote for. And I think a lot of those people look at the person and not straight D down the list or straight R down the list. So those are the people that are more defined like I am. I'm a Republican. I've been a Republican all my life since I first registered and voted in the 76 presidential election against Jimmy Carter. I lost that one. And so I've been a Republican. I think the Republican Party has moved away from most of us who are lifelong Republicans. So what should I do? Like quit? I don't think so. I think I want to stay around. I want to be that person who works across the aisle, who can be nonpartisan or bipartisan when it's required, to do things that are important to my constituents and to the state. Those are the types of things that I focus on. I have some colleagues that have come up there just to spot the other side, just to do everything they can to make the Democrats look bad. Well, okay, those people can't get a bus stop named after John Adams in their district. But they made that decision that that's what they wanted to do. I never was that way.
Yeah.
I just wanted to work on things like the addiction issue. You know, things that matter, things that we can all work on together and make improvements in our lives. That's what I'm about.
Your opponent had said to me a couple days ago when we did this show with him that he felt that there is a lack of energy from you to Beacon Hill on behalf of the constituents. Now, I want to ask you, is that fair criticism as it relates to, you know, your issues are not necessary, one's issues might not necessarily be addressed. You can't represent everything that I'm feeling. However, the energy issue, is the right attention to detail being addressed at the State House from your perspective? Fair criticism or no?
Not a fair criticism at all. Do I look like I'm disengaged? I mean, does anybody who's watching this think, wow, that guy just is not around? It doesn't seem like he's standing for anything. That's not the way it is at all. You have to pick on me for something. Look, I get it. I didn't have to pay a political consultant to know that he was going to run on youthful exuberance and I'm going to run on my experience. Okay, we get that. Just because I'm 61 doesn't mean I'm dead yet. Okay, I haven't even bought our burial plots, just to let you know.
Right.
So we're nowhere close to running out of energy. We've got 6 kids, we have 12 grandkids, we have another one on the way. Our youngest son is deployed to Southeast Asia, worries us a lot. But I keep my head in the game all the time. And again, I would go back and say, just contact any of my colleagues.
Yeah.
Go to the other side of the aisle. Ask them. They'll tell you.
My father, I'll just wrap up by this. My father ran for office, was very successful in community-wide positions in his community, and I'm very proud of his legacy and what he had done. But boy, I got to tell you, as a kid, watching your dad get criticized, appropriate or not, that's a hard thing. How does Mary, your wife, your 6 kids, your 12, we'll give a pass to the one on the way, but how does your family handle this? You know, you're in it. How do they deal with that?
That's a great question, Greg. Mary hates it. She hates for anybody to say anything negative at all.
Yeah.
Okay, I get that. But, you know, if you want to do this job, you're going to put your head down, figure out what you need to do, and you do it, and you're going to get criticized. One of the things about being an incumbent is that you have a track record. You've taken votes that people don't like, okay? Mm-hmm. And the more you take votes, the more chance you are in of having somebody say, boy, I didn't like that vote. And it could be the vote that the person says, oh man, that's it, I'm done.
Yeah.
So there is some danger in that, but you do what you think is right. And, you know, they talk about, you know, letting it just kind of flow off your back. You have to do that.
Yeah.
You have to believe in yourself, and I do. So somebody who's brand new, you know, can throw all kinds of stuff out, but the person has no track record of any kind, not serving on any kind of board, appointed, elected, anything. So it makes it easy to like say those things. But I have a track record. You've looked at it.
Yeah.
And I think that it'll speak for itself.
My friend, I wish you good luck.
Thank you.
Randy, thank you again for inviting us into your house, and we'll see you soon. I'm Greg Anderson. We'll see you next time.